Let us today discuss a few more terminologies that are a part of the Indian DPDP Act. Welcome to my YouTube channel where you daily find new content on data privacy, and currently we are going through a series of basic introduction and terminologies of the Indian DPDP Act 2023. So as I mentioned, we are going to talk about a few terminologies. We did this initial one in the previous video as well. What is personal data? As per the Indian DPDP Act, any data that can relate to an individual, identify an individual, is his personal data. It could be his name, his address, his phone number. Generally, personal data is expected to be unique, but some parameters like name cannot be unique. But a name and an address combination or a name and a phone number combination would mostly be unique only. So that is the personal data of the individual. It is not restricted to that only. There is some sensitive personal data also, for example, biometrics, financial information, and a lot more of them. And I have a complete video on personally identifiable information on my channel, so you can go through that. And the sensitive personal information is information like finance and biometrics. If they are compromised, then there could be a harm to an individual. For example, if your biometrics are, traced and wrongly used by someone else, then that can harm because biometric access can get impacted, etc. So that could be a problem there. So personal data is something that helps identify an individual, and sensitive personal data is, again, it helps identify the individual, but it's critical, and loss of sensitive personal information can harm an individual. Then you have processing of data. The process of processing the data is involving 5 processes: the collection of personal information, the storage of information, the usage of information, the disclosure of information, and the destruction of information. So I repeat: collection, storage, usage, disclosure, and destruction of information. All these 5 processes are a part of processing data under the DPDP Act. The purpose for collecting the information or using the information has to be very, very specific, explicit, and there has to be a logical or a legitimate purpose of why we have collected personal information of any individual and how we are going to use it. Then other terms include data principal. Data principal, who is a data principal? Data principal is the person whose data is being processed. You are a data principal because we are processing your name and your address and your phone number, right? So any individual whose information is being processed is a data principal. If the data principal is a child, minor, in India 18 and less is considered minor, then the data principal includes the parents or the legal guardians of that child. And if in case there is a person who has some disabilities, then the definition of data principal includes the details of the lawful guardian, who is going to take various decisions like consent, etc., on behalf of the disabled person, or like in case of a child, on behalf of the child, right? So data principal, normally the individual, child, then his parents or legal guardian, disabled, then his lawful guardian appointed by him. Then you have data fiduciary. Data fiduciary is the individual or that organization who is deciding on the purpose of processing data and how the data would be processed. It's a data fiduciary which is making the decision on the mechanism of processing of personal data that has been collected, right? So the decision on how would this information be processed will be taken by the fiduciary. In case the amount of data or processing of data is very large, then that fiduciary is also sometimes referred as significant data fiduciary. But the base idea is that the data fiduciary is the one who is going to define the purpose of processing the data and the mechanism of processing the data. And then you come on to the data processor. Data processor is the actual organization who is going to process the data, handle the data. He is the one who is responsible of taking care of the data. Remember, the processing of data under DPDP Act includes collection, storage, usage, disclosure, and destruction, right? So it's all these 5 processes. Their mechanisms are defined by the fiduciary, okay? And execution of those mechanisms is done by the data processor. They follow the directives given to them by the data fiduciary. And finally, you have a consent manager, like we have studied earlier also in the world of data privacy. There has to be someone who has to seek permission from the principal that for this purpose, I need this information. Can I collect it? Can I use it? Can I share it? And then I would retain it for X number of days, and then I'll destroy it by this method. So the entire process needs permission from the data principal, and consent manager is the person who is responsible for getting permission from that principal, right? So that's the role of manager. This is the very start of my series on Indian DPDP Act. We'll get into details of each one of them in the videos to come. I hope you like the content of the video. Please press the bell and the like icon. Share my channel and videos with your friends. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already done that, and share your own feedback in the comment section. Thank you.